Ah, back again. Hi there. Sorry about that. Having some issues connecting to Google Plus today. So apparently we've been rolling without anything happening. Okay. Sorry about that if you've been watching and wondering what the hell's going on. I know there's quite a few of you on. My name is Sandy Levesque. This is the Think and Grow Rich Daily Hangout, a quick hangout in the mornings dedicated to connecting to prosperity consciousness and a different kind of vibration or thought process from what a lot of people around us have about various things like, money, success, life in general. So we've been reading about the imagination. This is actually the fifth step towards riches, as laid out in Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And the other steps being a burning desire for something that you would like to create. Then faith being the second one, the faith that you can make it happen, starting to develop that through the third principle, which is actually auto-suggestion. And then here we're talking about imagination. And I think actually that must be the fourth step then towards riches. I might be getting my numbers mixed up here. It has been known to happen. So imagination, and yesterday we read about how, oh sorry, the fourth step was actually specialized knowledge, which was the last chapter we read, all about how just knowing stuff isn't necessarily going to actually bring you riches. It's actually knowing stuff about specific things, applying it to specific areas, specialized knowledge that will actually set you apart and actually help you to go beyond the average levels that a lot of people tend to function at. So now we're reading about imagination. Yesterday we read about the difference between the creative imagination and the synthetic imagination. It sounds very complicated, but the main difference is simply that synthetic imagination, as Napoleon describes it, is when you're using what you already know. It's kind of like thinking, basically. When you sit down and you start thinking about something, trying to find a solution to it. And then the creative imagination is actually when you tune in to infinite intelligence, to the ether, to the universe, and you receive ideas from out there and hunches and inspiration. So I just love that personally. So we're reading about that and about how you can actually develop both of them like a muscle. Okay, so we're reading on page 80. I'm going to share my screen here so that you can see what we're reading from. And hopefully the connection will stay okay as it is right now. So how to make practical use of imagination. Ideas are the beginning points of all fortunes. Ideas are products of the imagination. Let us examine a few well-known ideas which have yielded huge fortunes, with the hope that these illustrations will convey definite information concerning the method by which imagination may be used in accumulating riches. The enchanted kettle. 50 years ago, an old country doctor drove to town, hitched his horse, quietly slipped into a drugstore by the back door, and began dickering with the young drug clerk. His mission was destined to yield great wealth to many people. It was destined to bring to the South the most far-flung benefits since the Civil War. For more than an hour, behind the prescription counter, the old doctor and the clerk talked in low tones. Then the doctor left. He went out to the buggy and brought back a large, old-fashioned kettle, a big wooden paddle used for stirring the contents of the kettle, and deposited them in the back of the store. The clerk inspected the kettle, reached inside his pocket, took out a roll of bills, and handed it over to the doctor. The roll contained exactly $500, the clerk's entire savings. The doctor handed over a small slip of paper on which was written a secret formula. The words on that small slip of paper were worth a king's ransom, but not the doctor. Those magic words were needed to start the kettle to boiling, but neither the doctor nor the young clerk knew what fabulous fortunes were destined to flow from that kettle. The old doctor was glad to sell the outfit for $500. The money would pay off his debts and give him freedom of mind. The clerk was taking a big chance by staking his entire life savings on a mere scrap of paper and an old kettle. He never dreamed his investment would start a kettle to overflowing with gold that would surpass the miraculous performance of Aladdin's lamp. What the clerk really purchased was an idea. The old kettle and the wooden paddle and the secret message on the slip of paper were incidental. The strange performance of that kettle began to take place after the new owner mixed with the secret instructions an ingredient of which the doctor knew nothing. Read this story carefully, give your imagination a test, see if you can discover what it is that the young man added to the secret message, which caused the kettle to overflow with gold. Remember, as you read, that this is not a story from Arabian Nights. Here you have a story of facts stranger than fiction, facts which began in the form of an idea. Let us take a look at the vast fortunes of gold this idea has produced. It has paid, and still pays, huge fortunes to men and women all over the world who distribute the contents of the kettle to millions of people. The old kettle is now one of the world's largest consumers of sugar, thus providing jobs of a permanent nature to thousands of men and women engaged in growing sugarcane and in refining and marketing sugar. The old kettle consumes annually millions of glass bottles, providing jobs to huge numbers of glass workers. The old kettle gives employment to an army of clerks, stenographers, copywriters, and advertising experts throughout the nation. It has brought fame and fortune to scores of artists who have created magnificent pictures describing the product. The old kettle has converted a small southern town into the business capital of the South, where it now benefits directly or indirectly every business and practically every resident of the city. The influence of this idea now benefits every civilized country in the world, pouring out a continuous stream of gold to all who touch it. Gold from the kettle built and maintains one of the most prominent colleges of the South, where thousands of young people receive the training essential for success. The old kettle has done other marvelous things. All through the World Depression, when factories, banks, and business houses were folding up and quitting by the thousands, the owner of this enchanted kettle went marching on, giving continuous employment to an army of men and women all over the world and paying out extra portions of gold to those who, long ago, had faith in the idea. If the product of that old brass kettle could talk, it would tell thrilling tales of romance in every language, romances of love, romances of business, romances of professional men and women who are daily being stimulated by it. The author is sure of at least one such romance, for he was part of it, and it all began not far from the very spot on which the drug clerk purchased the old kettle. It was here that the author met his wife, and it was she who first told him of the enchanted kettle. It was the product of that kettle they were drinking when he asked her to accept him for better or worse. And I hope, guys, that you've guessed what the drink was, right? Coca-Cola. Oh, he's going to say it. Oh, I thought he wasn't going to mention it. Now that you know the content of the enchanted kettle is a world-famous drink, it is fitting that the author confess the home city of the drink supplied him with a wife, also that the drink also provides him with stimulation of thought without intoxication, and thereby it serves to give him the refreshment of mind which an author must have to do his best work. Whoever you are, wherever you may live, whatever occupation you may be engaged in, just remember in the future, every time you see the words Coca-Cola, that its vast empire of wealth and influence grew out of a single idea, and that the mysterious ingredient that the drug clerk as a candler mixed with the secret formula was imagination. Stop and think of that for a moment. Remember also that the 13 steps to riches described in this book were the media through which the influence of Coca-Cola has been extended to every city, town, village, and crossroads of the world, and that any idea that you may create as something and meritorious as Coca-Cola has a possibility of duplicating the stupendous record of this worldwide first killer. Truly, thoughts are things, and their scope of operation is the world itself. What I would do if I had $1 million. This story proves the truth of that old saying, where there's a will, there's a way. It was told to me by that beloved educator and clergyman, the late Frank W. Gonzalez, who began his preaching career in the Stockyards region of South Chicago. While Dr. Gonzalez was going through college, he observed many defects in our educational system, defects which he believed he could correct if he were the head of a college. His deepest desire was to become the directing head of an educational institution in which young men and women would be taught to learn by doing. He made up his mind to organize a new college in which he could carry out his ideas without being handicapped by orthodox methods of education. He needed $1 million to put the project across. Where was he to lay his hands on so large a sum of money? That was the question that absorbed most of this ambitious young preacher's thoughts. but he couldn't seem to make any progress. Every night he took that fork to bed with him. He got up with it in the morning. He took it with him everywhere he went. He turned it over and over in his mind until it became a consuming obsession with him. $1 million is a lot of money. He recognized that fact, but he also recognized the truth that the only limitation is that which one sets up in one's own mind. Being a philosopher as well as a preacher, Dr. Gonzalez recognized, as do all who succeed in life, that definiteness of purpose is the starting point from which one must begin. He recognized, too, that definiteness of purpose takes on animation, life, and power when backed by a burning desire to translate that purpose into its material equivalent. He knew all these great truths, yet he did not know where or how to lay his hands on $1 million. The natural procedure would have been to give up and quit by saying, "Ah, well, my idea is a good one, but I cannot do anything with it because I can never procure the necessary $1 million." That is exactly what the majority of people would have said, but it is not what Dr. Gonzalez said. What he said and what he did are so important that I now introduce him and let him speak for himself. One Saturday afternoon, I sat in my room thinking of ways and means of raising the money to carry out my plans. For nearly 2 years, I had been thinking, but I had done nothing but think. The time had come for action. I made up my mind there and then that I would get the necessary $1 million within a week. How? I was not concerned about that. The main thing of importance was the decision to get the money within a specified time. And I want to tell you that the moment I reached a definite decision to get the money within a specified time, a strange feeling of assurance came over me, such as I had never before experienced. Something inside me seemed to say, "Why didn't you reach that decision a long time ago? The money was waiting for you all the time." Things began to happen in a hurry. I called the newspapers and announced I would preach a sermon the following morning entitled, "What I Would Do If I Had $1 Million." I went to work on the sermon immediately, but I must tell you, frankly, the task was not difficult because I had been preparing that sermon for almost 2 years. The spirit back of it was part of me. Long before midnight, I had finished writing the sermon. I went to bed and slept with a feeling of confidence, for I could see myself already in possession of the $1 million. Next morning, I arose early, went into the bathroom, read the sermon, then knelt on my knees and asked that my sermon might come to the attention of someone who would supply the needed money. While I was praying, I again had that feeling of assurance that the money would be forthcoming. In my excitement, I walked out without my sermon and did not discover the oversight until I was in my pulpit and about ready to begin delivering it. It was too late to go back for my notes, and what a blessing that I couldn't go back. Instead, my own subconscious mind yielded the material I needed. When I arose to begin my sermon, I closed my eyes and spoke with all my heart and soul of my dreams. I not only talked to my audience, but I fancy I talked also to God. I told what I would do with $1 million if that amount were placed in my hands. I described the plan I had in mind for organizing a great educational institution where young people would learn to do practical things and at the same time develop their minds. When I had finished and sat down, a man slowly arose from his seat about 3 rows from the rear and made his way toward the pulpit. I wondered what he was going to do. He came into the pulpit, extended his hand and said, "Reverend, I liked your sermon. I believe you can do everything you said you would do. And if you had $1 million, to prove that I believe in you and in your sermon, if you will come to my office tomorrow morning, I will give you the $1 million. My name is Philip D. Amour." Young Gonzalez went to Mr. Amour's office, and the $1 million was presented to him. With the money, he founded the Amour Institute of Technology. Yet, that is more money than the majority of preachers ever see in an entire lifetime. Yet the thought impulse back of the money was created in the young preacher's mind in a fraction of a minute. The necessary $1 million came as a result of an idea. Back of the idea was a desire which young Gonzalez had been nursing in his mind for almost 2 years. Observe this important fact. He got the money within 36 hours after he reached a definite decision in his own mind to get it and decided upon a definite plan for getting it. There was nothing new or unique about young Gonzalez's vague thinking about $1 million and weakly hoping for it. Others before him and many since his time have had similar thoughts, but there was something very unique and different about the decision he reached on that memorable Saturday, when he put vagueness into the background and definitely said, "I will get that money within a week." God seems to throw himself on the side of the man who knows exactly what he wants if he is determined to get just that. Moreover, the principle through which Dr. Gonzalez got his $1 million is still alive. It is available to you. This universal law is as workable today as it was when the young preacher made use of it so successfully. This book describes step by step the 13 elements of this great law and suggests how they may be put to use. Observe that Asa Candler and Dr. Frank Gonzalez had one characteristic in common. Both knew the astounding truth that ideas can be transmuted into cash through the power of definite purpose, through definite plans. If you're one of those who believe that hard work and honesty alone will bring riches, perish the thought. It is not true. Okay, I'm actually going to stop sharing here. And I'm so inspired by this chapter, and I have an amazing story to share with you guys about this, because it's so true. You know, that last line there, if you believe that only hard work will get you what you're looking for, think again. It doesn't work like that. And this is such an important point. You really have to really have a clear awareness of this, to really start getting it. And I just want to give you a personal example of how this works, because basically, about a year ago, in fact more than a year ago, 18 months ago, I was looking to raise investment. I wanted to raise investment for my business. You know, I was starting almost like a franchise, and I needed to put money into it. So it was a lot of money that I hadn't had that much money in one go for a long time. And you know, the only other time I'd really invested so much money in one go was for a master's degree, and I'd taken a whole year of working hard, having 6 part-time jobs, working 7 days a week, making myself slightly ill in the process because I was working all the time. And I managed to raise that money. But so when it came around this time and I needed to raise money again, in my mind, you know, it was going to be very difficult to do that without doing a lot of hard work. And I just thought, well, I don't have a year here to do that again. I need to raise it quicker than that because I want to start this now. And it really blocked me. You know, I tried a couple of things. I was asking for help from the universe, you know, and I thought I could raise the money, and then things fell through. You know, I thought I was going to make the money from my existing business, teaching dance classes, but I could just never get enough together. And so what happened was that I was actually, I went to a live event in America for the work that I do. And whilst I was there, something inside me shifted, and I saw that this amount of money, I was making it much bigger than I am, you know, huge compared to me, like this big mountain, and here was little tiny Sandy having to climb the mountain to get to it. And so I realized I had to stop doing that. And what happened was an example of this creative imagination that Napoleon's just been talking about in this chapter with us, because I was sat there on a plane, flying home, inspired beyond belief because of this event I had attended, and with this new perspective on the money I wanted to raise. It was about $5,100, something like that. And I went through this exercise of listing all the ways that I could create the money, 50 ways. And I had done this before, and nothing had really happened. No burst of inspiration had come through. But what happened this time was, as I was sitting on the plane doing it, I suddenly remembered this exact story that we've just heard about, this story of Gonzalez and the $1 million idea and the preacher. It just suddenly popped into my mind. You know, I know it wasn't. It was my creative imagination, because it wasn't me thinking of ideas. It just suddenly, boom, there it was in my head. And I suddenly found myself remembering it, getting inspired by it, and that gave me a second idea to do something a little bit similar, to make a video about what I was doing and why I was doing it, about my dream, in the same way that Gonzalez had given a sermon. And I didn't speak for 90 minutes in this video. I spoke for, I have to just go and plug my computer in. Sorry, bear with me. I wasn't speaking, I wasn't giving a sermon, but what I did do was I shared why I do what I do. And I sent this video to some people. Sorry, I just got distracted by having to get plugged in here. And this is just a really quick story. So I remembered that story of the preacher. I made a video sort of inspired by it, about why I was doing what I do. and I sent it to some people, 9 people actually. And the people that I thought, this was not people I was expecting to send it to. Some of them I hadn't spoken to in 4 years, some of them in 2 years. I just sort of followed my guts and had a piece of paper and just said, to Infinite Intelligence, tell me who to send this to. And I wrote down whatever ideas came in my mind. And I have to tell you that one of the people responded to me within 60 minutes saying, I can help you. And in fact, 2 people helped me, 2 very amazing, kind friends. If they ever watch this video, I'm so grateful to you. And I can't wait to fully be able to repay the gifts that you helped me by helping me in that moment. That basically, I created the money within a week. Within 1 week, after having spent 3 months scratching my brains, pulling out my hair because I couldn't seem to do it. So when you're aware of how this works and you allow ideas to come to you, if you take action on them, very often they will actually transmute into a physical reality. Something will happen in the world. It's not just a random hunch. Because I've had moments before when I've had those kinds of ideas and I didn't take action on them, and obviously then nothing's been able to happen because the idea came through, but I didn't do what was necessary as afterwards. So, this can apply to you just as it did to me, just as it did to Gonzalez, and it works. So if there's anything that you are struggling with or that you're just not really moving forward with, ask yourself, are you just thinking about it? Are you really opening up to your creative imagination to raise that money? Are you doing what it takes to be open to ideas and hunches and acting on them? Because I realized I wasn't, and realizing that helped me to sort of change it and actually become open to new ideas. And also I stopped making the thing bigger than I was, and that was a really crucial part of it for me. Was I suddenly saw it as, well, what if this isn't actually a big amount of money for some people? To me it might seem like a lot at this time, but what if to other people that's just small change? And that's literally what happened. One of the people that helped me was a multimillionaire. So so I just wanted to share that with you. It's a real example of what this chapter is touching on, and how your creative imagination is it's like having a hot wire to the universe, but the more you realize that you have a hot wire, the better it works. Okay, it's like a muscle. So I'd love to hear if you have any stories similar to this. Please do share them in the group. And I'm going to wrap it up here. I know we started a little bit late, but I actually have to pop out here very soon, so I'm going to do that. Chica just wants to say hello. So thanks for tuning in and for bearing with us with the technical hitches this morning. I think we're actually going to be having one of our regulars back on very soon, so looking forward to having you back on, Glenn. And if you'd like to come in and read, then you're very welcome to. I wish you have an amazing day, and you might want to re-listen to this episode. Obviously, fast forward to the beginning when we didn't start properly because my connection cut and the recording had already started. But just fast forward, and maybe if you are struggling with something, I recommend listening to it again, because even as I was reading it, I felt like this energy was coming through me, and I started to read really fast, and I think stuff might have been happening. Woo stuff, as Napoleon would say. So I recommend going back and watching it again, or just listening to it again. So have a great day, and I'll see you soon. See you tomorrow, back at the same time.